Welcome in, everybody, to my Week 3 Power Rankings for the 2021 CFL season. I'm really excited to get into it, but really quickly before we get started, if you want to support the show, the best way to do it is by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. Really helps me out, helps me get it out to more people, and I really appreciate it. But with that said, let's get into today's Power Rankings, which were very, very difficult to put together, honestly. Trying to sort through the mess of the first 3 weeks of the season. I think there's still going to be a lot of movement coming in the coming weeks. But for now, this is what I came up with for this week. So starting at number 9, we have the Ottawa Red Blacks, who moved down from number 8 last week down to number 9 this week. Honestly, with the Red Blacks, it's all about offense because I don't see many doubts about their defense through the first couple of weeks, and this is kind of what I expected this team to be. I thought it was going to be more of a defensive-led unit, but the offense has so many questions, and they really haven't answered any of those through the first couple of weeks of the season. Yeah, you could say they're behind a team like Hamilton that has 0 wins on the season, but they just haven't shown anything on offense. They don't have much proven CFL talent at all on offense. Matt Nichols has not looked good at quarterback. They haven't surrounded him with the good enough surrounding pieces. The offensive line has been really, really bad, as expected after all the surprise retirements before training camp. And even before that, I didn't think this offensive line was going to be great or anything. And also the receivers are not getting a chance to show what they can do because the offensive line's not giving them the time to take shots down the field. So it's really been a really disappointing first couple weeks for the Red Blacks offensively. And honestly, you could say Hamilton's looked worse. I wouldn't disagree with you, but at the same time, we've seen what a lot of these guys on Hamilton can do at the CFL level. We don't know the same about the Red Blacks. We don't know a lot of these guys. We don't know if they can produce at the CFL level, and that's why I have them at number 9 in this week's Power Rankings, even though I do really like their defense. Now at number 8, we have the aforementioned Hamilton Tiger Cats, who are the only winless team in the CFL. I don't usually like moving teams down on their bye week, but since Edmonton and Calgary won their first games of the season, I thought it was right to move them above Hamilton in this case. But I still have faith in this Hamilton Tiger Cats team going forward. I think that they really needed to solve some major issues during their bye week. I'm hoping that they solve that. They released their starting left tackle from week 1, Trevon Tate, who a lot of people thought was the answer at that spot. So they're going to probably have somebody else in mind to start at that spot come week 4 here against Montreal. But I think when you actually look at this roster, there are a lot of injuries. I don't think there's been any team that's been more affected by injuries through the first couple of weeks of the season. And these next couple of weeks are really going to show us what this Tiger Cats team is made of. They have Montreal this week, the 3rd and final road game in a row to begin the season. I think they're the only team that had 3 straight road games to begin the season. And then they have a back-to-back with Toronto starting on Labor Day and then on the following Friday. So those 3 games are going to be really crucial. But remember, they're going to have a bunch of home games coming down the stretch this season, and they were undefeated at home in 2019. So keep in mind, if that's the case again this year, they could go on a big run later on this season. But I think the quarterback position, they need to get better quarterback play. They need to get the receiving core healthy, but most importantly, that offensive line. I think the defense has looked okay. It's not the best in the world or anything like that, but I think offensively is really where their problems lie, and let's see if they solve that during the bye week. Now at number 7, we have the BC Lions, and quite honestly, I had a really tough time ranking the bottom half of this power rankings. The top half was pretty easy to put together, and I think there's kind of a consensus building with that, but trying to figure out these last few teams in the power rankings is really, really tough, and BC is really the epitome of that. They've had a couple really, really good halves this season. Obviously, I think the first half against Calgary in week 2 was really impressive. Mike Riley looked like his former self, but they really regressed in week 3 against Edmonton, really laid an egg at home, only threw for over 100, around 150 yards the whole entire game. They couldn't move the ball on offense, and honestly, it could have been a lot worse than the score indicated. Edmonton was stalling for field goals, and BC really couldn't move the ball most of the game. So those offensive line problems are really resurfacing for BC. Their tackle positions really, really struggling right now with the 2 injuries to Riker Matthews and Joel Figueroa. We'll have to see how that works itself out these next couple of weeks. Can they solve those positions again, get those guys healthy? If not, I think it's a repeat of 2019 where this is just a finesse team with a lot of talent on the outside, but no talent along the offense or defensive line. And the defensive line, they've shown a little bit more than I was expecting out of them to begin this season, but at the same time, the run defense still hasn't been very good. You saw that late in the game against Edmonton. So I think if Hamilton and BC played today, I think Hamilton would still be favored over BC. But honestly, because BC has the one win, they have played better football, at least from a high-end perspective so far this season. I had to have them over Hamilton, but they take a big tumble in this week's rankings, falling from number 4, and we'll have to see how they do going forward. But again, really hard to rank these last few teams. Speaking of which, we have the Calgary Stampeders at number 6, who last week were number 7, so they move up one spot. They get their first win of the season. They have the rookie quarterback Jake Maier in there. I don't think he was overly impressive. I think he made a lot of mistakes. He only had about a 50% completion percentage for the game, which I know is not the end-all be-all, but he had a lot of big chunk plays created by his receivers after the catch, got away with a couple bad passes as well. And I don't know, with that big question at the quarterback position, how much I can really trust this team going forward. I could really see them sinking back to earth this week when they play Winnipeg. So I'm really interested to see how Calgary does going forward, but they get the win. They move up right now in the power rankings, but I don't know how long they're going to stay at this number 6 spot. Now at number 5, we have the big riser this week, the Edmonton Elks, who got their first win of the season in week 3 against BC, and they move all the way up from number 9. So they were in the basement of the power rankings last week, and for good reason. The first 2 weeks they looked awful, but this week they really answered a lot of those questions that I had about them. Mainly the offensive line. I'm sounding like a broken record talking about the offensive line a lot in this video, but their tackles really struggled the first couple weeks of the season. Having Kyle Saxlett, a guy that I really hyped up during my roster review series, back at left tackle, he really gave Trevor Harris a sense of comfortability. Ditto Greg Ellingson in the receiving core, who had a really great game in that game against BC. So I'm really fascinated to see if they can continue to build on that momentum. Obviously, you know, we don't know how well Trevor Harris is actually playing. He had a better game against BC, a much better game than he did the first couple of weeks, but he still had a couple really bad throws, and we'll have to see how this Jamie Elizondo coach team, how they're going to deal with the whole COVID outbreak that's happening right now on the team, and if they get that game against the Argonauts rescheduled. We'll see how that happens. I'll comment on that further in the week, but for now, I got to move them up. I think they solved a lot of questions this week. They answered a lot of calls, and if they could follow this up with a win against Toronto, albeit if the game actually happens, then, you know, they're right back where I thought they would probably be at this point of the season and be in the West playoff conversation and be one of the more talented teams going forward into the latter half of the season. So really interested to see how Edmonton does the rest of the season. They're the big riser this week, and that's why they rank at number 5. Now at number 4, we have the Montreal Alouettes, who are coming off the loss against Calgary. Very disappointing. They really let me down. I really thought they were going to take the ball and run with it after their victory against Edmonton in week 2. And they fall one spot in the power rankings because I still have a lot of faith in them. I think they have a lot of great offensive talent, which it's a theme in this video. I think offense is more replicable every week than defense is. No offense to defense or anything like that, but that's just the fact of football. Offense is easier to translate throughout the season, and Montreal has a lot of great pieces on offense. William Stanback, I think, is going to lead the league in rushing yards this year, if I'm being honest. It could be James Wilder as well as having a great year, but I think Stanback is the best running back right now in the CFL. The receiving core is really showing me a lot. Eugene Lewis being a more complete receiver than I gave him credit for in my roster review series. So offensively, I really trust this team, but the defense really showed those questions that I had about them in my roster review series, with bad tackling in the secondary, undisciplined penalties. Nick Usher, a guy that had a lot of discipline issues with Edmonton in 2019, roughing the passer, penalties like that, those resurfaced in this game against Calgary. So we'll see how the defense plays out going forward, which I thought was really improved based off what I saw in week 2, but we'll see how, if we get the week 2 Montreal Alouettes going forward, or do we get the week 3 Montreal Alouettes? We'll see how they do going into a huge game against Hamilton in week 4. If Hamilton wins that game against Montreal, they're going to feel very confident that this is still their division. And Montreal, they really need to win that game at home. It's their home opener. Shut the door on Hamilton early on this season. And I'm really fascinated to see how that game goes. And for now, Montreal lands at number 4 in the power rankings. Now at number 3, we have the Toronto Argonauts, another riser this week. They come up from number 5 last week, and a really impressive win against Winnipeg. I was very impressed with head coach Ryan Dinwiddie, as I said in my takeaways video. But I was also very impressed with Nick Arbuckle, who looked very comfortable in this offense, just executing, playing that point guard kind of quarterback where, he doesn't hold the ball too much. He's not going to, run around, make a bunch of scrambles and throw the ball down the field a ton, but he's going to execute within structure of the offense. And we saw that in this game. He was very effective, especially early on in the first scripted 10 to 15 plays or so. Just really great start for Toronto in that game, and they closed it out. DJ Foster, this running back that they just found, wow. He's probably the most elusive runner I've seen in the CFL this season, just based off that small sample size that I saw. And we could see a potential star running back emerge here in the CFL this season with DJ Foster. And so he's a player to keep an eye on going forward as a potential Rookie of the Year candidate. I know it's a little bit of early to say that, but just based off of the explosiveness I saw, it was just impressive. And so I'm very fascinated to see how this team continues to build upon that in week 4. Are they going to build on what they did in week 3, assuming their game actually gets played against Edmonton this week, and build on that going into the Labor Day Classic against Hamilton? Honestly, those 4 games against Hamilton are really going to decide where this team finishes this season. Ditto what Montreal and Ottawa, those 4 games between those 2 teams. When we get into the bulk of these divisional games, that's really where we're going to see the hierarchy really stabilize, I believe, in this season. But Toronto, for now, I have a lot of faith in them. I really liked what I've seen this season. So they rank at number 3 in this week's power rankings. Now at number 2, we have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And I know what Argonauts fans are thinking. We just beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But here's the thing. The week before, Winnipeg totally kicked their ass. So it was kind of a wash in the end. It really proved that both of these teams are actually legit. And Winnipeg, I still have so much faith in them going forward. They do a lot of things well. They were still fighting their way back into that game. They made it a 1-score game late. But they do have some injuries that they're dealing with right now. Andrew Harris mainly, a big loss. Darvin Adams coming back at receiver really made a difference, I think. But we need to see Andrew Harris back for this offense really to reach its full potential going forward. But that's the main question I have with Winnipeg. I think their defense, it showed some warts that I thought I was going to see early on this season with all the guys that they lost to the NFL, Marcus Sayles and Winston Rose. But I think overall, Dietrich Nichols, who's been a really good find there at halfback, has been a huge addition to that defense. Those guys have done a pretty good job, those rookies back there, and I still think that overall I have a lot of trust in them going forward. They're going to lose a game here or there. No one's going undefeated in the CFL. You have to play multiple times against multiple teams. So I think I still have so much faith in Winnipeg. They're still going to be one of the best teams in the league going forward, and they're right in the thick of the Grey Cup conversation, in my opinion. Now, at number 1, we have the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and this is the obvious one. They're the only undefeated team in the league. Last week, they ranked number 2, so they move up 1 spot. And what can you say about them? They're playing very good offensive football, which is one of the few teams in the league that are really playing very good offensive football right now. Ottawa did kind of slow them down a bit in this game, but they were still moving the ball. They still were making plays despite Shaq Evans, their number 1 receiver, being out of the lineup. This Canadian group of receivers, Braden Lenius, Keon Schaefer, Baker, Mitchell Picton, all of these guys really stepping up this season, where I really didn't give them enough credit in my roster review. Cody Fajardo looking really good. And then on defense, you have the defensive line playing really well. Garrett Marino looks really good as a good addition at the defensive tackle position for this team. The secondary looks as good as I thought it was. And I just have a lot of faith in this Rough Riders team going forward to continue to show what we've seen so far through 3 weeks. But that is going to be the end of today's video, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching. Once again, my name is Jason. If you want to support the show, the best way to do it is by hitting that like button and subscribing to USC Huddle for more CFL content just like this. Let me know in the comments what teams I have ranked too high, which ones I have ranked too low, and all of that. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.